Hey everyone, happy Friday. I hope you guys all are having a great Friday. It's almost the weekend. I'm very proud of all of your hard work. I hope you guys are able to keep it up. Today's gonna be kind of an easy day. We're not gonna have too much to do. We're just gonna finish up our essay and the book, and then I want you guys to just make sure everything else has been done. So you've done at least 3 Achieve articles for me this week, at least 3. Okay, and then that you just commented on each of the other videos. So the last thing we're going to do for our essay, yesterday we took it and we added our transitional phrases. So you should be watching these videos in order so that it makes sense. And yesterday we added a hook, a beginning, a middle, and an end transitional phrase. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to take what I had, I'm going to turn it all into complete sentences into a final copy. And your final copy should look something like this. Now, what we like to add for our final copy is, of course, our hook, a conclusion, transitional phrases, and we also want to make sure we throw in some figurative language. And this week, I'm challenging you to add some dialogue, which is conversation, people talking. So I'm going to read to you what I have, and then I want you guys to do your own, and you can take a picture of it, and you can send the picture of your essay either to me through a comment. You can post a picture onto Google Classroom, or you can have your parents text it to me. Either one of those is fine. So they say life is what you make of it, but I say life is what you bake of it. Last week, I baked a delicious homemade lemon meringue pie. So boys and girls, I have my hook, and I'm gonna underline or highlight my hook in pink. So you always want to start with your hook and then go right into your thesis, and then you can start your first paragraph. So I have my hook and then my thesis. My hook is in pink, my thesis is in yellow. So the first step I took was gathering all the freshest, most delicious ingredients and getting my kitchen ready. I made a list of all my ingredients and headed off to H-E-B full of excitement. I sure hope this works, I thought to myself. After collecting everything I needed, I went home to bake. As I arrived home, I put on my favorite jazzy playlist. So what I also want to do is with orange, I'm going to circle my transitional phrases. Oh, that marker's not going to work. I'll use this orange. I'm going to circle my transitional phrases in orange. So the first step I took was my transitional phrase. And then with my green marker, I'm going to underline my dialogue and figurative language. So I do have some dialogue. I hope this works, I thought to myself. We know that jazzy is an adjective. What else? Oh, I headed off to H-E-B. That's a vivid verb. That can count. So I headed off to H-E-B. I could have just said I went to H-E-B, but I didn't. Let's see. Full of excitement. That shows my emotions. So anything that shows how you felt or what something looked, smelled, sounded, tasted like, that's going to be some sensory language, which counts as figurative language. So I danced around my kitchen, and next I followed the instructions to make my pie. First, I'll make the crust, I said. I carefully followed each set of instructions, and in no time, the sweet, tangy aroma of lemon meringue filled my kitchen. I could barely wait to taste my yummy treat. So boys and girls, there you can see my transitional phrase in orange. And I'm going to underline my dialogue and my sensory language and figurative language in green. So a yummy treat, sweet, tangy aroma of lemon meringue filled my kitchen. That's some good sensory language. There you go. Next. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, my pie was ready to eat. I bit into the creamy lemon filling, flaky crust, and smooth meringue and exclaimed, "This is heaven on earth." I was so happy I could cry. All of my hard work finally paid off as I enjoyed the fruits of my labor. So boys and girls, finally is my transitional phrase. And finally, after what seemed like an eternity, what do we call it when we have an extreme exaggeration? There's a word for that. It starts with the letter H for an extreme exaggeration. I bit into my creamy lemon filling, flaky crust, and smooth meringue. Boys and girls, that's some good sensory language. And then what do we call it when I say this is heaven on earth. Obviously, heaven isn't earth. I'm comparing two unlike things without using like or as. That's a metaphor. So I put a metaphor in there. And then finally, my conclusion, I put a box around my conclusion in green. That's how we wrap up our essay. It's kind of restating the beginning. So, boys and girls, that's my essay. You're going to write one very similar, and I want you to add figurative language and sensory details and vivid verbs, and I want you to have a hook and good transitional phrases. You guys are awesome writers, and you've showed me that all year, so I know you can do it. Today, we are going to finish our story from Miss Ida's Porch. And to answer the questions I had from yesterday, the cultural setting, this is actually African-American culture, and this historical setting is a while ago. So if this man, what's his name, Mr. Fisher, he's remembering something from the 1930s, I'm guessing the story is taking place in about the 60s or the 70s, the 1960s or 70s. So it's historical fiction. We talked about the cultural setting and the historical setting yesterday, and today I just want you to enjoy this story and listen for what kind of lessons you can learn. You'll remember Mr. Fisher is talking about that famous musician who came to stay with him, and he wasn't allowed to stay in a regular hotel because segregation was still a really big thing in those days. Evening, everybody. Must be some powerful thinking over here tonight, because everyone's deep in it. Shoo, Kate was climbing the steps of the porch. I hadn't even heard her coming up the walk. Nobody else must have either. Hey, Shoo, Kate, come over here by me. Miss Ida patted the place on her swing beside her. Shoo Kate is Mr. Fisher's wife. Her name is really Mrs. Kate Fisher, but everybody just calls her Shoo Kate. She told us one time that when she was little, she used to tease her baby brother, telling him that their mama had said she had to call her Sugar Kate because she was so sweet. The name came out Shoo Kate when her baby brother said it. Then everybody started calling her that. She even told us kids to call her Shoo Kate instead of Mrs. Fisher. After she sat down, Shoo Kate reached over and poked Mr. Fisher. What have you been telling these folks, Fisher, to make everybody so quiet? I ain't been telling them nothing you don't already know, darling. Mr. Fisher and Shoo Kate smiled at each other. They always seemed to be smiling and laughing together. Did any famous people stay in your house, Shoo Kate? T-Bone asked. Now I know what the talking's been over here, Shoo Kate said, laughing. Fisher, you've been telling them about the time that Duke Ellington came and stayed at the place in West Virginia where you were living. I sure was, said Mr. Fisher. No reason to keep that fine bit of history secret. So it's history now, is it, Poissant? Said Mrs. Ida. I think she was teasing. All the grown-ups laughed. Well, T, said Shoo Kate, I never made history like Fisher here, but I was somewhere one time when history was being made. Shoo Kate, I bet you know what you're talking about. Go on, tell the children. Miss Ida sounded excited. Boys and girls, what do you think she's going to talk about? Thinking about the history of this story and the rest of the story, the culture of the story, what do you think Shoo Kate's going to tell us about? The sky was getting dark. I liked the best time most of all when the sky is dark. You can imagine that almost anything is out there. You can imagine almost anything. Shoo Kate began her story. Around that same time Fisher was living in West Virginia, I was living with my family in Washington, D.C. My papa worked for the railroad. He had a train car porter so that he had to travel most of the time. All of us looked forward to Papa's days off, the days he was going to be home. Oh, those were the best days, the days when Papa was home. He made sure we all did something special on those days. All of us were together. Papa, Mama, and each one of us kids. We didn't have much money, but we had enough. And as we shut out as we were in Washington, we could still find lots of things to do. What do you mean, shut out? Shoo Kate, Freda asked. Just what the words say, sugar. Black folks were shut out. We couldn't go to movie theaters, big restaurants, just about any place you think folks ought to be able to go if the place is open to the public. Folks have the inclination to go. Why, when my papa was growing up in Washington, black folks couldn't even go to the national monuments. Pumpkin looked at Shoo Kate kind of funny. But Washington is the capital city, she said. That's where they make laws for the whole country. How could they break that law, keeping folks from going to places just because they were black? Frida had been waiting all evening to get back at Pumpkin, and her chance had finally come. Now look who's talking out of her head. Girl, Don't you know anything? Used to be that the law said it was okay to keep black folks out, she said. Don't you two get started now. Fred is right about the laws, of course, Miss Ida said, pulling Pumpkin down beside her. But that's another story. A long story for another time. Go on, Shoe Kate, please. Shoe Kate did. Anyways, this one time we were all real excited because Papa was going to be home for Easter. He wasn't always able to be there for the holidays, so we were all looking forward to have him home and being able to dress up in our new clothes and go to church together. But it wasn't Papa's plan for us to go to church that Easter Sunday. After we were all dressed and ready to leave the house, Papa said we were going to catch the trolley car. That's kind of like a bus, kind of. Then we got really excited. Catching the trolley car? We knew that Papa must be planning something special because we didn't need to catch the trolley car to go to church. We only had to walk a couple of blocks to get there. Shoe Kate sat up straighter. It was like her remembering was pushing at her back. How grand we were riding on that trolley that Easter Sunday morning, and even grander when Papa explained that we were on our way to the Lincoln Memorial. That was exciting enough. Then he went on to tell us that we were going there to hear one of the greatest voices in America. Who were you going to hear, Shoe Kate? Free to ask the question this time. Boys and girls, I want you to stop and think. Who do you think they're going to go listen to? We were going to hear Marian Anderson, a grand singer, a voice more magnificent than you could ever imagine. But there was more than just going to hear Marian Anderson sing. Much more. Shoe Kate wiggled down to the edge of her chair and moved her face closer to us. It was like this. Several months before that Easter, a concert had been arranged. It was arranged for Marian Anderson to sing at Constitution Hall. Constitution was the biggest concert stage in Washington where all the famous musicians appeared, people from all over the world. Marian Anderson was certainly famous, and she had sung all over the world. Didn't matter, though. Marian Anderson's concert was not going to take place in Constitution Hall. You see, Marian Anderson was black. The people who owned the hall said no black musician was going to sing on their stage. Shoe Kate sat back in her chair and her eyes got narrow. We rode on that trolley and Papa told us what had happened. A lot of people in Washington were furious that Miss Anderson was not going to be able to sing at Constitution Hall. The wife of the President of the United States was one of those furious people. So she and some other of the others were going to arrange for Miss Anderson to sing somewhere else. Shoe Kate started moving her hands as she talked, and her smile started coming back. Constitution Hall, with its white columns and high ceilings, wouldn't welcome Marian Anderson, but the Lincoln Memorial would. There would be no walls to keep people out, and the sky would be our ceiling. On Easter Sunday morning, just about anybody who wanted to be able to hear and see Marian Anderson could, including my entire family. So boys and girls, what did they do so that everyone could hear Marian Anderson sing? And I also want you to think, how does it make you feel that she wasn't allowed to sing at Constitution Hall just because of her skin color? Why is that wrong? Why was that wrong for them to say she can't sing there? I want you guys to start thinking about that. Shoe Kate's smile was all over her face. At first, we thought it might rain. We had gotten there early, very early, hoping to get close enough to see. While we waited, we kept looking up at the sky, wishing for the sun to come out. The crowd grew and grew. So many people, all kinds of people, black folks, white folks, standing together in front of the Lincoln Memorial, waiting to hear Marian Anderson sing. Mr. Fisher started grinning himself. What Shoe Kate was about to say must have been his favorite part of the story. How can you tell it was his favorite part of the story? The way he was smiling. It was about time for the concert to start. Then, just as Marian Anderson was getting ready to walk out onto the place she was going to sing from, the sun came out. Yes, it did. Shoe Kate's voice grew softer, so we moved closer to hear her. When the concert started, our Papa took turns holding the little ones up so that they could get a better look. When he reached down to get my baby brother Jimmy, I saw tears rolling down his cheeks. I asked my mama if Papa was crying because he was happy. And this is what Mama said to us sometimes when we caught her crying. Mama said that some of Papa's tears were happy tears, but some were not. Some were tears of sadness and maybe even anger. Mama said to me, "Listen to the words she sings, Kate." Miss Anderson was singing a song I knew. "My country, 'tis of thee." I recognized these words. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. Your papa's thinking about those words and what they should mean, Mama said. Thoughts like that might be making him feel good and bad at the same time. That's probably why there are tears in your papa's face. Shoe Kate sat back in her chair and her voice got almost regular. So you see, on that Easter Sunday, I saw history being made there at the Lincoln Memorial. I also saw my papa cry with pride and sadness at the same time. It was a day that will live on in my memory forever. So boys and girls, I'm going to stop right there. That's still not the end of our story. There's a few more little stories, but here's a beautiful picture of Shoe Kate telling the story to all the children. So boys and girls, what I want you guys to think about, the author does a great job showing you how Shoe Kate felt and how her father felt without actually using the words to express those emotions. They showed you what they felt like, not told you what they felt like. So I want you guys to think, how did Shoe Kate feel when she was telling that story? And how can you tell? And how does Papa or her Papa feel when they went to that concert? And how can you tell? Is it possible to feel happy and sad at the same time? Why do you think Papa felt happy and sad at the same time? And I want you guys to answer those questions in the comments. And I want you guys to all have a wonderful weekend. And I will see you again on Monday. You guys be safe and wash your hands. And just remember that Miss Beck loves you and Miss Beck misses you.